I hear people talk about UX for my site and how important that is. Do you have any insight into what exactly this means? Is it the looks? Is it the offer? Is it the placement of buttons? And how do you know if you have a good UX or a bad one? This is a great question. And it's kind of like the answer to it is very simple and also extremely complicated. And the reason that is because what is good UX is an ever evolving answer in terms of your direct understanding of what you're putting in front of somebody. But insofar as basics, it's very easy. Okay, so what's important is that, what's the best way to, what you're mostly concerned about is how quickly and easily, when you put something in front of somebody, they get what you're talking about. I think, generally speaking, when we're just starting something, we can have a tendency to overcomplicate it, because naturally, I think a lot of us, when we're starting something new, we find some models that we like, right? We may find some websites. Oh, I like this about this website. I like this about this website, and that about that website. So we look at these things, and of course, we want to try to emulate them. I think that's good, and I also think that that's a mistake, because the fact of the matter is, in a lot of the sites that we frequent and we really like, the place that they're at now has come through an evolutionary process. They definitely did not start in the version of the site they have now. So it's important to remember that, when you're just getting started with something, the UX of that is going to be different for the UX, or the user experience. That's what it stands for. The user experience of the site when you get to a certain level. For MemberMouse.com, we've went through many iterations of our site. And the critical thing to remember is that the things that inform good UX and good user experience is how your specific customers and your market are interacting with your site. So there's no, for everyone, no matter how much experience they have in UX, or if they have no experience at all, there's no way to bypass the essential part of the process of getting to the good UX, of just putting something out there and responding to feedback. Now, that feedback can be direct feedback in terms of people telling you something. It could be looking at analytics. What are my conversion rates like? Are people clicking on these buttons? It could be things like using tools like, the name's escaping me right now, but there's a number of tools that actually you can record the screen while users are going through your site. So you can actually you can watch videos of people scrolling through your site and looking at things. This can be a valuable thing to use. Yeah, the tools are FullStory and Hotjar. These are a couple. These can be valuable tools in the beginning. They're generally, I think, good for really large businesses. But I think for a small business, they can be good to use in the beginning. And they have even like free tools that you can use. Because the part of your question was, and how do you know if you have a good UX or a bad one? No, the way you know is you put it in front of somebody, right? So the cheapest way to do this is get your landing page or your sale page laid out, because this is the critical aspect of your site. It helps people understand why they're on your page, what they're doing there, if there's something you can help them with, and if there is something you can help them with, then how do they purchase it? This process needs to be as simple as possible and as quickly um, uh, um, consumable as possible to increase the probability of the person actually going and committing to buying your product or signing up for your service. So it does take a lot of iteration and putting it in front of people in the beginning, which then means that it's really important to just get something out. I know I didn't do this in the beginning. I was really bad at this with the plugin, with the MemoryMouse plugin. I actually spent like a year like building it and doing all sorts of things without putting it in front of anybody. And I know now that that was a huge mistake because I was trying to make it perfect from my own perspective. And sure, like I'm a talented software engineer. I was an architect for 10 years, you know, working for very large companies. So, you know, I know something. But the fact of the matter is it always comes down to how people engage with it. And then you have to respond to that. So in my opinion now, it's better to put something very bare bones up so that you can get people to start interacting with it, so that you can respond to what they're doing and improve it based on the feedback of those people who actually are your customers or your potential customers, because those are the people who user experience. Their user experience is what is important, not my user experience or your user experience as the creator. Your user experience as the creator is not what's important. The user experience of the person you're trying to communicate with is important. So naturally, the only way we can know if it's a good user UX is to ask the people who are using it. So the very bare bones, readily available, simple thing you can do is put it in front of your friends, a family, something that I know people have done, which is super easy. If you like work in a coffee shop or something like that, you can ask a stranger like, hey, like I'm working on this project and I was wondering if you could just sit down and take 5 minutes, I'll buy you a coffee. Just take a look at my site and give me your feedback. Because the feedback is the most critical, is the gold. In the beginning, when you're creating something, the feedback is essential. Because if somebody sits down in front of your site, like you can be working, when we work on something, we're building something, we get into a zone and we kind of get blinders on and we're so familiar with what we're doing. It's like a film director watching his own movie. It's just impossible for him or her to step far enough away from the work they've been steeped in for so long to get a fresh perspective on it. And obvious things slip through the cracks. So, if you put your site in front of somebody and you watch what they do and they're confused by something, they can't find a button. They're like, oh, they ask you a question. How do I check out? Well, that's a sign of bad user experience. They don't know how to check out. So clearly it's not easy enough for them to do that. Or what is this site about? They're asking you. So all of these questions and feedback will, from strangers or your parents or, I think the people who at least as much as possible closely remember your closely reflect your customer segment. This is the ideal, but really anybody will do in the first passes, because you just need somebody other than you to let you know if you're meeting those top levels of criteria of a landing page or a sales page, which is, do they quickly understand why they're there? Is it clear what you're offering and what the value is? Remember and we're kind of getting into sales page design here, which I am not an expert at, but when you're trying to talk about the value of your product, again, it can be, we may first try to do it from our perspective, but again, everything should be talked about from the perspective of the person who's wanting to buy from you, which again has a lot to do with language. What words do your customers use when they describe the problems that they have? So this is why, we're getting, you can really drill down in any one of these things and be very specific. And that's why the UX experience process, the user experience process, is not a one and done thing. It's a constant thing across the entire lifetime of your business. You will constantly be improving the face of your site, to try and more effectively and efficiently communicate what you do, what the value is, and then make it as easy as possible for people to sign up.